this short academic waiting time for all who are coming, and we are a lot of people here. It's an amazing amount of participants. So I gladly greet you at the second seminar of CENSE, and tonight Polina Khatsenka will take her time to talk about her, to have a talk about her experiences. I don't repeat the title of the of the evening. About Polina, a few things. Just I think those who are more familiar with the activities of CENSE, her presence and her name is we don't really have to introduce her, but there are many people who don't know her. For me, the really the personal experiences that in the past 2.5 years since we have conferences and events, I can't really imagine it without her, because she's always there. She was always. I met her for the first time before the Budapest conference in Plassy, and she's not just present, but she's always in the center of activism. She's performing, she's organizing, um, and for instance, at the second conference in Ústí nad Labem, she was in the core of the organizer team, as well as at another conference in the Czech Republic, methodologies of sonic thinking. She was also in the center of it. Uh, and this is one part of her activity. Otherwise, well, there is one personal thing which she's from Belarus, from Minsk, and I was really interested why she left Minsk, and the answer is actually uh, very simple: for better studying possibilities. So she was in Belarus. She didn't in Belarus she didn't find the right institutions to study following her interest, and finally she uh, joined uh, the Ústí nad Labem University at the time-based media design faculty, and right now she's in Linz, and as an Erasmus exchange student. Um, as an as a sound artist, you are really. I suggest you to visit her SoundCloud site, which gives a good introduction into into the remarkable broad work which she has already done in various electronic ambient all the styles which are somehow concentrated about this interest which appears here. And for instance, you can listen there her piece, her prize-winning piece Alpha Omega, which which won a prize at Europe's second student 3D audio production competition in Ambisonics, um, and other really interesting and fine pieces. I guess she will also speak about some of them tonight. And as an organizer, she works with the organizer, curator, and performer. She works with Ústí nad Labem based collective, which is the Phonon collective. Do you say Phonon tilde collective, or is it just in the writing the tilde? Uh, anyway,
Oh, no,
yeah.
we don't say it. It's just in the writing, but maybe I see that the rest of the crew is here. Jan Kromholz and Martin Marek and Iva Polonecka are also here, and Petr Hanžel seems also to be here. So maybe if they want to comment on this, it's open. But
Anyway, was just a remark for the writing of Phonon collective, because it reminds well, it reminds applications which which are used in this working field. Um, I'm sure I have left, I have omitted a few important things, but the real important thing is Polina's uh, own time to take us into ambisonics and spatial audio. So please, Polina, it's your turn now.
Thank you, Csaba, for introducing, and thank you everyone to joining us tonight. Happy there's lots of people interested in this topic and in CENSE activities. I would just want to shortly introduce my personal background into this topic, and I also would like to say that if you have any questions during the or comments or anything, short advice on concrete website or technology or anything behind what will I be talking about, just interact please, because I might be able to advise you something that I wouldn't mention in the presentation. So because there is a lot happening even now in the industry, or not in the industry, but in the artistic art scene on the field of spatial audio, even though everything is closed and there isn't much public activities happening, but there is lots of development now in the spatial audio and binaural audio and integration with VR and other ways of working with spatial audio, and some available techniques for like people who don't have access to venues where there are 12, 20, 64 channels audio systems installed. So it is kind of getting closer to the listener, to the receiver as a person. So yes, if you would be interested in something, I can just somehow direct you to websites who are focused on this topic. For example, I recently realized that even OBS, they have already integrated the streaming of multi-channel, which was a total surprise for me. I realized it actually 2 days ago, and I will definitely go for taking a deeper look on it, because for now, for me personally, it seems like an only way for being active in the field of spatial audio. And yes, I was also wanted to say in the beginning that the name of the talk, as you saw it, wherever you found it, it was focused on a very specific field, which is ambisonics. But I changed the approach slightly recently, because, as I said, there is not much possibilities of really experiencing this ambisonics in its full range. So for me personally, the relation to spatial audio or hearing too is a bit different, because just because of the lockdown, just because of different possibilities that I personally have, because there is no access to these facilities, and it's possible it's difficult to prepare something for ambisonics competition, for example, or to prepare a spatial audio installation when a person doesn't have access to PA like this at home or at a working space or at some studio. For example, the work that Csaba mentioned, this Alpha Omega, I made it during my Erasmus exchange in Düsseldorf, at Hochschule Düsseldorf, and there was a special subject for it, and it was directly connected to this competition. So we had it as all the students who participated in the course had to contribute. So we we were working on these compositions for during the whole semester with consultation and also with, of course, technical consultation with Dietrich Lekschat, and that was one of the ways for me how to get into it. But yes, I will later mention the ways I personally work with spatial audio in the presentation. I don't know who here has some experience with spatial audio or who doesn't, and please forgive me if I speak someone too general or someone too specific. It is just, I think, the aspect of this field. So, but feel free to interact anytime, please. I think I will start the presentation. So. This the following slides that I will show you is like my very subjective choice of the projects that actually influenced me in this topic and guided me into that direction where I am now. And I know that there is lots of different approaches and examples which are also not of less importance of the examples that I will show, but this is somehow my own personal framework that formed the way I work or the way I work with colleagues. So yes, this is just in the beginning to say that, of course, this is very subjective. And the first example that I mention you always is this pavilion made in 58, which was a kind of like Gesamtkunstwerk, because as a visitor you would experience a piece running in time. So it's not a fixed media, it's a piece that you experience fully, you experience it with your body, you enter this pavilion and you go through it and you spend some time there. And if you're a visitor who has time to experience it, you would spend there around 30 minutes, because there were two pieces played. The one by Yannis Xenakis in the beginning, and the longer from Edgar Varese in the further part of the pavilion. And the form of the pavilion is something that also attracts my attention, because the form is made on the basis of the graphic score made by Xenakis to his piece that later was played there. So for me personally, it's a nice example of how sound and how sound can be turned into visual, and how sound can influence or maybe inspire the outcome in the meaning of architecture, in the meaning of like physical and super materialistic thing. There was also like these squares that you see here, these small dots. There were built-in speakers which were transmitting spatial audio composition. Of course, it wasn't live. It was also all fixed media. It's not fixed media in the meaning of time, but fixed in the meaning of that there was already composition made in advance, and it was transmitted through this spatial audio system, which is not of any analogs of the spatial audio systems existing now. So it was just it was repeating and forming actually at the same time the form of the pavilion, the space that was created for this pavilion. Yes, it doesn't exist anymore, and but there are some simulations of how sound could sound there, how actually it could be perceived there, and how the spatial audio diffusion was made there. But I personally don't think it's a way of finding out it really, because like this was an opportunity which is already gone, and we cannot experience it. But it's still a very important example of this work, or like the way of thinking about integration, sound and visual, and how sound affects and works together with architecture and space. This is another example which for me it is interesting in the meaning of that. In the beginning, the first idea was to make a different setup of the listening space, where the audience should be surrounding the orchestra of real people playing, performing, and in the end, Karl-Heinz Stockhausen insisted on turning it actually on the opposite side, and surrounding the people with the orchestra. But in this case, virtual orchestra, because there were no people playing. There were recordings transmitted also through the speakers, also built in this whole pavilion. And it was just a reversed situation of listening, and expanding the listening situation when it was still more or less usual setting, when there was an orchestra and there were people standing, sitting, perceiving it just from one side, and there was like this classical setup. And in this piece, Karl-Heinz Stockhausen was experimenting a lot, working with this change of perspective, both of the listener, of the audience, and of the orchestra. But in this case, there were not orchestra, like living people, living live performers interacting with each other and with the audience, but just the speakers, which is connecting it to the acousmonium, which is another format where there were not performers too, but the setup was more or less classical. So there were audience in front of the stage, but the pieces also were composed especially for this format. And in this case, the big difference to, for example, this example, this West German pavilion, is that, of course, the spatial situation is different, because there is no sound surrounding people like from all sides. But of course, it was different to the usual setup, or even to just usual stereo, because there were lots of sound sources coming from different speakers with different aspects. Every speaker sounded differently, and some speakers were not transmitting the sound to the auditorium, but also like to the ceilings, or there were even like the moving speakers. I guess you might know it, like the sound shower, I think it was called also, like, but maybe it was something that was made recently. I will not confuse. But which was an important thing is that the perception of these pieces, the perception of the sound or composition on this with this approach was purely by just with the sound, just with the hearing. There was no any input regarding visual side, and it's mostly very low light in the audience, and the visitor is having this possibility to just really focus on listening, really focus on hearing without any visual distraction. So that was also one of the aspects of Acousmonium. And coming to Ambisonics, that was an approach of recording spaces. Then it went to reproduction of recorded or composed material. The graph that we see here, it's different setups of microphones and they capturing of the sound and how it is combined then when it is recorded. When you look for it for Ambisonics, you will see that this is like 2 microphones. They can be like 3 microphones like this, and they will be capturing in the end if they are set right. They have to be also set in one point in space, and if they are set right, there is no phase cancellation or anything that can occur after the recording. So the recorded space is hypothetically, but in more or less all the situations when the setup is right, they are like really capturing the space in very detailed way. So it's a really realistic image that you get from this recording. Realistic image in the meaning of how the space sounds there, not recorded by 2 microphones in a AB or XY or MS setup, but in the meaning of spatial hearing. And this is how what it developed into. This is a setup of Ambisonics, listening or like reproducing ambisonic composition reproduction. And here we see that there is like a sweet spot where the sound, actually it is logical when you think about this moment of recording of a situation. For example, when you are in the middle of an orchestra and you're recording sounds from all the sides, or you are in a church or in any actually kind of environment and you are recording at one space, it will be logical that then it would be heard the best from this very point which is this sweet spot, which is also working with stereo sound. We also like need to be in this middle, like between the speakers, to form these triangles to perceive both the sounds from both speakers at the same time. But yes, with this Ambisonics, it's even more specific, because you have the sound coming from all the sides, and there are also, of course, subwoofers. So you're like having this sphere of sound, and you have this very privileged position of being in a sweet spot. And if you are not here, you are like losing a lot from the composition. And the important thing of this was also a step further in the meaning of composing, because it was one of the first techniques where it wasn't channel based, but it was object oriented audio. And you, as a composer, you didn't have to set every sound to exact amounts of speakers and exact numbers of speakers where you want them to be projected from, but you had the possibility to work with one sound which you will move inside this virtual sphere. So it was much more easy to experiment in the meaning of composing. So yes, that was like a big step. And Dolby Atmos or 4D sound, actually too, they are still working with a similar approach. At least it's not the same, but it's a similar approach to composing when you work with the sound as an object which is in this virtual space that you are working with. This is another example, is Dome, which is like, I usually say that it is almost the same as Ambisonics, but the half is cut and you are like just under the speaker's dome. But the dome, as I experienced it, it allows more freedom for a listener to move around. Because like this Ambisonics composition, when I had this possibility to listen to it on a bigger event, when it was like more or less of the same size as this Clank Dome in Karlsruhe, it was a big difference for people to be in the middle of the speakers, of the speaker sound system, or to be like on the periphery. With this Clank Dome format, it's a bit more friendly for bigger audiences. I would say from my subjective experience, but I actually never worked on it. I experienced it, actually, this very system, and it was amazing. But I never worked in zirconium because this very Clank Dome, it runs on zirconium, and it has some other aspects of this experience in the composition in that place when you're a visitor. Also, for me personally, there is a big advantage of Ambisonics is that it is friendly for people who don't have access to spatial audio systems, because it is possible to work with Ambisonics just with headphones. It's not the same experience, of course, but at least when the settings are done right, you will be able to really have this idea of what is happening in the sphere. I'm not sure if it is possible with zirconium, and I'm not sure. Yeah, I shouldn't talk about it because I never experienced it. Let's move on. This is the most one of the most sophisticated ways of creating virtual fields of sound. And I personally didn't hear it, but from people who did, I heard that this is the most hyper-realistic system that they ever heard. And this is like thanks to this speaker setup. They are really generating the wave fields which are experienced in the way that we hear them in real life. So people who experience it say that they really had a feeling that there were objects really moving here, or it is also possible to simulate there, since it is simulating the movement of sound waves in space. They were like experiencing sound somewhere outside of the room where the system was. And it is written on the website of Paul Oman, who is the initiator of this 4D sound platform, that he was very much inspired by this approach and wanted to take it even a step further from it, not working with this closed space, because it was still like this kind of square where you were in the square of the speakers. So he, with I don't remember the names now, sorry for that, but you can find it. There are some short documentaries, or also Paul Oman's presentation on TED Talk, I think, where he talks about hearing and listening, and about this development of this project, which was started in Budapest in 2014. And this is the Spatial Sound Institute. The system is called 4D Sound, and there is another one now. if I'm right, it's in Berlin now, in Monon. Not sure how they are planning their work now in lockdown, but I'm just always saying that if you have a possibility to perceive it, just go for it, because it's one of the most sophisticated systems, I would say, existing now in the field of spatial audio. I can say here maybe surround sound, but here we're talking about the field of the artistic field or research, not about the surround sound for movies or other commercial ways, or like sound for gaming, etc. Because this is another branch of application of spatial audio. But I won't go into this much. And the idea of this 4D sound is that you are, as a visitor, I wasn't in Budapest, but I experienced this platform when it was in Karlsruhe, and they built a platform. It is made from steel, and there are poles on the perimeter of this platform, and in every pole there are 3 speakers. So they are creating like this very spatial field, and the speakers are omnidirectional, and not behind, under the this metal net there are subwoofers also, so they are creating like a really almost physically perceived field of sound. And yeah, there is a special software that you work in if you want to compose something for the system. It is also possible to play live on it. I'm not sure exactly how CPU taken is this, and there should be 2 computers at least running at the same time. One is making just the sound diffusion, and the other is making the sound sources, I guess. But yeah, you can find the information on their website. They are talking also about the software and some, not much on the technical specifications, but yes, there is a lot about the content. Csaba is, I guess, is the only person here who had real experience with this. You are working with it, right? You made a
Yes,
composition.
and actually, during the first CENSE conference back in 2018, we visited 4D sound, and actually, one of the things uh, which were played was the poem Electronic of Varese in a spatial um, version.
Okay.
Yes, some of us were there. All the people who it was one of the program points of the first conference. Um, yeah, that's it.
Okay. Thank you for the comment. I think I will go on. Yes, this is also one of the important things regarding spatial audio, and it's not just about Pauline Oliveros, because there is numerous um, techniques already existing today, which are sometimes based on her approaches and sometimes not. But I think still that was a significant point in the meaning of perception and in the meaning of uh, dividing or making the difference between hearing and listening as a different kind of states and a different kind of awareness to the surroundings. There is also a book from her. I think it's called it is made for composers, but not only for composers or interprets or musical interprets, but also for people who are who are interested in developing their listening skills and being more capable of opening up their ears and integrating more into their environment that they are in. So I really advise to look for it. It's a good starting point. I believe you will find more things. For example, one of the recent workshops, not much recent because it was in Place actually, when Miloš Vatichovský was organizing the symposium, I had a possibility to experience workshop with Davide Tidoni, who was working. He developed a set of exercises which were aimed at getting aware of the sound in space with just very easy and basic examples. But for me, it was very fascinating to experience all these things finally, like actually really understanding that, really experiencing that this sound moves physically with this speed, and the sound is very physical thing that is not something that we just hear, but we hear it because of it is moving and it is being distributed through space. Yes, it's just maybe if you're interested, I can also then write this name. If you don't know Davide Tidoni, I can share it somehow with you. Like these techniques that he developed were, for me personally, very fascinating. Another example of a totally different approach to sound in space is the work of Bernhard Leitner, and this is just a fascinating thing for me too. How is it possible to develop your own approach or your own, I would say, speaker setup, or your own. It is an example of not going with the I don't know, I would say trends maybe in today's language, or some just something that exists there, some formats, but building your own, examining or studying your personal attitude, and working with sound, and also in this meaning of like something very physical that you can build up the space with. Yes, this is also like a person who very extraordinary influenced my approach to spatial audio, and how can we, from which perspective it is also possible to look at the spatial sound. Yes, I really much advise to checking out his work. There is a lot of on the internet. I think he has also a good website where it's possible. I won't go anymore into someone else's approaches because there is a lot existing. Something a bit older, something very contemporary. I would also like to talk a bit, I think, about my personal work. Just briefly showing how I personally work and think about sound and space so far, because I'm somewhere on my path with the work that I do, and I always am actually trying out the different setups and different concepts. So I actually started working with sound 5 years ago, 4 years ago, maybe more active. So it is the things that I will show. It is more or less like my path from those days to today, which is constantly changing. And the first work was this. Yeah, it was 5 years ago, and I like this work because of the easiness of the setup, and I personally still am happy of the result of this work. And this is a building of our faculty in Ústí and Labem. And the things that I was doing there is that I found some latent sounds that are hidden usually for a usual visitor of the building, which we don't really perceive usually, which exist anywhere where people have their activities. Actually, it can be in any kind of institution or at homes. There were sounds as refrigerators or computers working, or automates with food or beverages, or elevator moving, which are kind of like, from my perspective now, it seems to me that these are like kind of loud and distinctive sounds, but at the moment it seems to me that no one actually pays attention to them. So I was thinking about how to work with them, and the way I did it was that I just was picking up the sounds from those objects or spaces, and I was just transmitting them directly, but outside of the building, which was creating another kind of soundscape in front of the building, in front of the school, like in front of the faculty. And it was like kind of turning the building inside out and integrating it to the outer surroundings. It was just, as it is written, it was just contact microphones, mixing consoles or amplifiers, and speakers. It was like 6-channel installation running just live. The other one was work with speech, work with the recorded notes of a visual artist, Josef Čapek, who I found this vinyl where there were these recordings during another work, actually with phonon, with Jan Kromholz, when we were preparing to our performance. And I decided to work with them in a way that Written into the Clouds, it's actually the name of the book. It's the name of his notes or aphorisms or some statements regarding the situation in the world, in Europe, and in Czechoslovakia during the 30s, shortly actually before the war. And I wanted to process it somehow, and that was an inspiration for building up this installation, and it was running live. So it was this 16 speakers installed in the way that you see in the pictures. This was a tryout at a school building at a university. It was a semestral work, and this was a situation in a gallery, and it was running live all the time. And there were pieces of these recordings. The recordings were cut into pieces, and I made the system in Ableton to randomly choose which excerpts it will play back, and it was also chosen randomly by Ableton to which speaker this goes. So it was like constant flow of these excerpts, and then this setup. This is. I think this is above the head of usual visitor. So it was like constantly creating this ever-changing cloud of thoughts. Also, it was an interesting aspect for me to work to process the heritage of a visual artist and to process them into sound installation. It was like this transition that was interesting for me to examine. And this was my bachelor work, where I worked with Ambisonics, because like these previous formats, it was just something that I made on my own. And this was Ambisonics. This was using Ambisonics plugin actually in Ableton. if you're interested, also I can show you later where you can check it out. And this is the plugin that you can use with headphones also. And this installation was running live also. And there I was using just a sound of a trigger, of a click of like a particle or a grain, which was randomly which was running through a setup of that I previously made in Ableton of different tracks, which were also like randomly choosing in which part of the sphere which was created there, this particle or like the multiplied particles, which I also made in Ableton, like just the set of effects that don't modulate the sound but multiplies them, multiplies it. Where that will go to. So it was like a kind of a crackling sphere of sound inside this this school university building where it was exhibited for the first time. So yeah, here I was also it is obvious now that the visual part of installation is kind of important here, but in the beginning when I was creating it, I was actually thinking just about the sound, and I was thinking about how should I install it in the gallery. And then we, together with our professors and with Jan Kromholz, who was helping me with his dad also, we developed this construction, speakers construction that was reflecting this Ambisonics approach, which was like working with this sphere and these circles and this cube inside of this is here like this eight speakers. Yes, it is like this 8 speakers set up like this. And it is also one of the things that is I find nice about Ambisonics is that you have a file that is like Ambisonics format, and you can adjust it to any amount of speakers that you have. So you can have 8 speakers or 16 or 100 etc speakers, and always you have this possibility. It's not guaranteed that the sound would be like really the sound will be truly realistic in this case if you don't have this like spherical setup, but there is a possibility to adjust it. So it is more or less universal to use it in different setups, this Ambisonics approach. So I personally find it very nice, a very nice possibility to work with it. So you don't create something which is made for a very specific setup, which can be played only on this sound system, but you create something which can be theoretically can be played back anywhere where there is this Ambisonics system available. Okay, and here it was a work together with Jan Kromholz and Barivan in a cellar form of stalls where we worked in a totally different way, where we just experimented with only mono signal. We had these 8 speakers placed in some places that we found interesting for us to somehow like explore or discover for ourselves in this situation. And we worked with a river recording nearby, Jezera River. And yes, we were transmitting this recording to different spaces inside of this bigger space, and it was also creating a very immersive actually experience. And it was not so light so much light as you see it in the picture. So when you entered the space, you were like really in the darkness. So there was like even more intense living this through this sound. So it is just another way of how to work with space and sound when you don't want to, for example, for some reasons, when you don't want to use any spatial audio formats.
Hello.
So yeah.
Hola.
Hello. That was another work. It was actually a part of CENSE conference when we also together with Jan Krumholz took part in this exhibition, which was a part of the conference, and we made different recordings of Polina River, which is running into Labem in Ústí nad Labem, and it is there are several spaces or places where the river gets into very weird conditions regarding the acoustics there. And for example, there are 2 kilometers or 3 kilometers of the river when it goes to a tube, and it's not running in open space, but it's just it's put in a tube, and it flows in the tube. And there were lots of changes, like human-made changes in the river flow, and also there is lots of different industry buildings or like factories close to the river, and there is lots of also noises from the traffic, which is just like was made recently, that it runs above the river, and we were collecting those spaces which we found somehow important or interesting for the work, and then we somehow like recreated this river flow with this speakers that we also placed like around the gallery space. And we worked together with Ibra Ibrahimovic, who was documenting the river for a long time, but picturing it. And yeah, we didn't go to all the places which were on the pictures, so we somehow like filled the gaps of the spaces that he was documenting. Yes, and this is another approach to space and sound, which is the work that I made not a year ago already. About it was a tool, kind of like a primitivistic tool that I made just using the DIY coil. I also made it together with my friend Wojciech Grot, who helped me in realizing this. And there was a coil which was capturing the electromagnetic field and transforming it directly to sound. So it was a kind of a device with which you would map the electromagnetic fields around you. And yes, so it was like installed in this way, and it was possible to move it around, and you could also grab the stick and go exploring the field around you. And fortunately for me, for this work, our studio, it was also installed in our faculty. There is lots of noises from Wi-Fi from this. This is the picture. It's from installation which is running all the time. It is on the building of the university, and it also made lots of very beautiful from some perspective, but very intense noises in the meaning of sound, but of course also in the meaning of electromagnetic radiation. So this transcription, some kind of like transfer from this non-visible, non-tangible field that is here, that is existing and surrounding us, and we are moving in it and living in it. Somehow, like given a tool to get aware of this and explore it somehow with the sound is also, like, from my perspective, is also a way to work with the sound as in a spatial meaning. I think that maybe, yes, that was also a performance, a quadraphonic performance that we realized with Jan, and it was a very nice space in Teplice in the building of Telecom. It was a corridor between two parts of the building, and there we played an improvised set performance. It was more or less musical, but it seems to me that we explored a lot how it is possible to adjust to this, like, noodleish form, and the sound was also very specific inside, because I guess you can imagine how this type of surface sounds like. It was like very plastic, and it was creating very weird feeling to be inside and to be perceiving this quadraphonic audio there. I'm not sure if I should go on with talking, or maybe there can be a point where we can stop, or I'm not sure, because there is lots of things that I can talk about still.
There
But
are a few questions in the chat. I mean, especially one thing about the plugin in
okay.
Ableton. Maybe uh, if you would like to talk a little about the envelope for live plugin, how you use it, how what is it, uh, how is it possible to use it in your installations?
I'm not sure if I can share. Um, I will try to share my screen, and I maybe will show um, how I work personally with it. But actually, it's very easy to do. The thing that you would need is some kind of. Do you see Ableton now, or is it still my presentation?
It's the presentation.
Okay, I'm experiencing some issues with my drivers. I'm using Windows now, and I'm not sure if it will manage it, my PC, but I will try to show. Um, so there is this. There is this set of these instruments that you can download from the envelope page. And the way it works is that you always have this, not on MIDI channel, but you have to use master. Like, this is the most important thing with envelope, most important part of envelope, because this routes your audio to direct outputs of your audio interface, and you can actually manage the sound output just here. So this is like your, okay, must be okay, not the master. So I usually place it just on some random audio track, because it just, anyway, every plugin that you add later, it is automatically routed to this master bus. The thing that I don't do is that I don't combine more plugins on one audio track. So, for example, here we can put a source banner. No, I will start with another thing. Here, this master bus. Do you see it well?
I can see it well, yes.
Okay.
Hopefully everyone.
Okay. So here you see this decoder part, and this is where you want your sound to be streamed, actually. So
Yeah.
you can use this binaural decoder, which means that you will use your headphones. Binaural is for like stereo recording, which is made in the way that how your ears hear the sound, or how your ears perceive the sound in headphones. So this decoder can be binaural, which is made for headphone work. There is a stereo possibility. I usually work in quad, and in this installation I use octophonic decoder. They also added recently this 5.1 and 7.1 decoder possibility for people who have at home, I guess, this setup for surround sound, for video, for films. And there's also a possibility of Ambix, which, as far as I know, requires another computer for the decoding only. So it's not super CPU taken. So yes, I usually work. Yes, let's just go to quad. I switch off the monitor usually because I just have four um, monitors in the place where I work. So you just do this and you set up, you make sure that your audio interface, like the channels are set right. So where there is one, it is one, whereas two, it is two, and three and four, because for this plugin it is important because you cannot set it up, so set it separately. There is always this like stereo, so it's like 1, 2, 3, 4. It's like a circle all the time. Here you also, yeah, this LED setup is something for the lights, and you can also find it like this setups that Envelope have, like these platforms that they use and developed actually this plugin for at the website. They also recently made this edition, I think, of the streaming format, and actually the same thing is I am doing. I will just find a link because I am is an institute based in Graz, and they are developing still, like they are working on it. There is an institute focused on Ambisonics, and sorry, I'm just looking for the chat. Yeah. Um, which is focused on Ambisonics, and they developed this set of tools which can be used for free with different DAWs. Reaper is among them, so you can work with Ambisonics for more or less free. And yes, it's a very powerful set of tools. I personally worked with this when I was making this contribution to this competition. So when it is envelope in Ableton, not EAM plugin set of tools, you need to make sure your output is set right. And like here, now it is more or less working. So you can start from that point, you can start working with the audio. And as I said, when there is some other plugin put in other tracks in Ableton, they are automatically routed. This means that they are routed to master bus. So you don't have to set up anything else actually. So you can go with this diffusion, go working with the diffusion just from that moment. And it's up to you which approach you use. Like you can also work with live input, audio input, which is a bit of CPU taken, but it is possible. Or you can put any samples or anything like inside and work with this like placement of sounds, or like you can choose if it's mono or stereo. Here you see like this is the center of your stereo file, and this is left right. Yes, there are other sets of like there is monopanner or quad panner also, where you can directly work with one channel audio source or 4 channels. It's up to you. It's up to your goal, I would say. And I think it doesn't make sense to go into this much now, because I think it's a lot about trying out. For me, it's a nice thing to map any of these parameters. Depends on the situation, to map it on, for example, LFO or yeah, I think this works only for Ableton 10 for now. I'm not sure if it's integrated in other versions, but for example, you can do this, or instead of LFO, you can connect it to anything else in Ableton, which can allow you to go into automated movements, I would say. So sometimes it is interesting to do this, sometimes it's not so much interesting, because after some time it is really clear that it's automations, and it's not like the real performance, I would say. But I think there is a way to find out how is it possible to work with it. And like, yes, at this moment, if I would be having now here these 4 speakers, this sound will be just like it would be doing this thing that it does when you see like this visualization, which is a nice thing for me personally, to be able to make sure that this thing that I hear is the real thing that should be happening. There are some issues with these plugins with the center, because like when it's in the middle, the sound switches somehow, not in the way that you would expect it to behave here. I'm not sure if they already did something with it or not, but there are 2 options, I guess. Find a solution to avoid it, or it is possible also, if you're a coder, to open it and just change it, because it's still a Max device, so it is possible to work with it, to open it up and to change it regarding your goals. Yes. There is another approach that I use, and Jan also uses, I think, and I would delete this now. And it can be more accurate, but it is really time taken. But I guess it is the most effective and specific way of working with spatial audio when you don't have any access to some rendering machines, and when you want to work on your PC with Ableton Live exactly. And this approach also requires this multi-channel audio interface that has multi-channel outputs. And the way to do it is to create return tracks and set them all to external output. You need to have your audio interface set in a way that you can work with, oh, it's not here, can work with separate channels, so you can really work with each speaker separately. So you set it up like this. For example, when you have a quadraphonic system and in your audio, in your channel, you record, okay. Here I don't have any incoming signal. You create an audio track where you just record a so-called dummy track. which is just a track without anything, without any audio information inside, and it is just a container actually, where you have a possibility to work with automations, which you can do by yourself, like very specifically. You can, for some it's not enough, this resolution of Ableton, but for me personally it worked well, but it just takes time. I just need to say it like in advance for people who are interested, but it's really effective. So when you make it like this, your sound goes to this different sense. So you like really directly are in control of where your sound is transmitted to. So you can make like very specific gestural movements with this approach. So this is like the very basics of it. Now I'm not sending anything here, but if I would like to, I can. For example, I'm having some instrument here. I don't know. For example, just some sample playing, and I'm having audio from that, and you see that it is receiving this channel where I have only this automation dummy track, which can be of course duplicated and etc. I'm receiving it from another channel, or it actually can be a live input also. But I'm receiving information here, and from here, from this channel, the audio information is distributed to these returns, which end up in those speakers. So this is another approach and I think it's not so much CPU taken, so it's like actually the easiest way. There is also a possibility to work with this with Audacity, and on our conference at CENSE in Ústí, there was a person who was playing from Audacity live, like in multi-channel, and yes, there is lots of things that, or like softwares that can be hacked in this way. So yeah, I work with Ableton, so I try to explore these possibilities in Ableton, but it's also possible in different softwares. Also in Audacity, which is free, and also Reaper is a nice option because of this plugins from IEM. Or yes, I didn't have a possibility to explore VR much, but it is also, as far as I know, when I was like looking through all these possibilities now, like during the last 2 months, I actually found out that more or less any active company which is involved in spatial audio and VR, they are adjusting to the situation, and they are also creating the tools for streaming, or for streaming of spatial audio, like multi-channel audio, and binaural audio too, and for integrating it into gaming and etc. So yes, I hope it was not too messy because I didn't plan actually to show. Yeah, sorry.
Thoughtful and interesting for us. I see a question in the chat from Ala Yusri. The question is, do you have thoughts on deciding whether to diffuse sound via analog, modular, or digital means?
I know that there are some modules actually which are made for this spatial projection, audio projection, but I would have to take a look because I bumped into it somehow like 3 or 2 years ago, and it seemed very fascinating to me, but it was also kind of expensive as most of the hardware stuff, so I didn't explore it much, but I know that they exist for people who like really don't want to go into digital. Because there are people who combine it, who combine playing live, and there was a duo playing at our phonon, which I didn't talk about actually, concert, but they were using the modular, and the diffusion, the spatial diffusion was made through, I actually don't know exactly what they were using, but it was made through the computer. It's possible that they were working with Max MSP, I think, just separately, not integrated in Ableton, but just Max, because there is a set of tools also for Max and for PureData and for Super Collider also, which is working with this multi-channel output. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
And in Ústí is try to develop some system for modulars by engineer Jan Hrubeš. We are in the phase of testing, but maybe it will be available in a few months.
Yeah, Jan is talking about our colleague and friend who is building his own designed synths. Like some are super easy to solder. I was on a workshop where I built one by myself also. For example, like this. This is the name Solid Core. Is the name of his project, which he does also with another person, Adam Khmel, who also was a student at our university. And this friend of ours, he also develops now for latest year, he develops this instrument for quadraphonic sound diffusion, for exactly for people who are interested in working with fully analog sound without any digital conversion.
Thank you.
Where you can find this, not nowhere for now, unfortunately, because he still develops it, and now there was not much of workshops from him or from them, from the duo. We plan with our crew, with Phonon, we plan to hold at least one workshop with him. So for now, we don't have any website, but we have a SoundCloud and Facebook where you can find us in our activities, and I will share it in the chat. And there we will for sure share the information. If oh, I sent it not to everyone. Yeah. If there's anything happens, and if they, our friends, decide to also make their activities more public than it was before, because they were very much oriented on local scene, which means on Czech Republic. So there wasn't much material from them outside. But yes, I will also find their page also on Facebook. Wait a moment, please. Yeah. This regarding this question on this approach or like I don't know, preferences. For me, it always depends on the topic that I intuitively bump into or decide to discover, and I always try to the general thing about my personal work is that I just always somehow like have this connection to sound, and you saw that there's lots of it and it's very general actually. So this is kind of freeing me from choosing from all the available approaches and tools, and what I personally dive into the most. But I would say that it is always about the place also. I didn't say it, but it seems to me that it was more or less like obvious for most of you when we were talking about these works approaches, and not only mine, but also that I showed. It was also always connected to space. It's always site specific. It always works with this. I would say genius loci, or the context of space. It can be supporting it or otherwise, or interrogating it somehow. But the approaches are actually essentially are developed usually from the space where the work would be installed or exhibited. Regarding the online courses, I can recommend. I need to find it. There is like for me, I found only one course where it is really explained in an understandable way of how to work with envelope and how to work with Ambisonics. And if you are using different software setups, how to route your audio inside of your computer. And I need some time to find it. If you maybe, I don't know, grab the discussion somehow, and I will look for it. Or maybe if you want, we can maybe somehow connect out of this Zoom meeting. Is it possible? I'm talking to Ala Ústí. Yes, I am under my name there, as you see here. So you can find me, so we don't spend time on this. Because there is not much material so far. I mean, like in the meaning of tutorials that really help, I would say. Yeah.
Polina, I would like to ask about field recording. It's maybe also taking a step closer to the topic of acoustic ecology. Field recordings can be used in so many ways, and so many different things can be done by registering the sounds of our environment. What would be your approach? What do you have a concept, or is it so? How do you work with field recordings?
I usually listen, and where something gets my attention, I listen first, even then, and then I decide which kind of interaction it should be for me. If I should just listen and get from this sonic events or like this soundscape, if I should learn from it, just learn about how I can't speak academically in this field. I'll just say it like as I just in a usual language, like how sound can interact with each other, and how sounds can create the space or create different spaces at the same time, or how actually how many dimensions can be in one very on the first sight or on the first, I don't know, moment of hearing. How many dimensions can be at one space where like you are placed in, I don't know, in one point of surroundings. So when there is a more of a learning situation for me, I just keep on listening and getting inspirations or like learning from surroundings, or what can be there or what can exist, what reference to dimensions or to different perspective can be at the same moment in the world, or where there's something interesting for recording. Or I'm not talking about sound maps, because I somehow I'm not active in this for so far. I just maybe with my field recordings, I'm not sure if it's worth putting it to a public to be approachable by public, to be a part of this sonic image of the world. I mostly record for myself, for using the recording somehow in my work later. So for the last couple of months, it's interesting for me to record also with different setups, not just microphones, but also like with the piezo pickups, or with something that can give us like really different perspective on the sounds that we are hearing, the sounds that we are perceiving. That, for example, some object in a public space is perceiving like. So yes, for me it is different levels of depth of perception, I would say.
Yeah, thank you. So, dear participants, any further questions to Polina? Our time is getting consumed, and please put your questions now.
I have one little question. I was really interested in hearing the presentation of your work, and there were one work, the one in the cave in the basement with the nice stones, where I didn't get what was the sound exactly. Did you record the space itself, or?
No. We worked with the recordings of the river, which was the city is Venice over Jezera, or Benátky nad Jezerou is the Czech name, and there was a symposium also made by Miloš Wojciechowski, and Jezera is the name of the river which runs there. So it seemed to us a nice correlation with Venice Biennale, because it was called Venice Biennale in Venice over Jezera. And we decided together to work with the recordings of the river, Jezera River, which was like very close to the place where it was installed in the end. So we walked along the river and found some places where we also then connected together, but we were recording only with one directional microphone with the shotgun. And later we just made this post-production where we distributed the same recording, like, so the same mono source was distributed to this eight speakers. So yeah, it was their river field recordings.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you for asking.
Yeah, it's just a bit frustrating because I think maybe on SoundCloud there is some of your sound. Yeah, I kind of wanna hear. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a bit tricky now.
There is another question by Anthony, who would love to ask you, Polina, further about field recordings. Do you use them unedited, or do you cut, combine them, do any different things, and do any different things with them? Yeah, this is a very basic question about working with field recordings.
I think it depends a lot on the situation again, because I use in my work, when I'm working on some sound designs or when I'm creating soundtracks, compositions, I use field recordings as sound sources where I create my instruments from, like on basis of which. And sometimes there are situations, for example, as in this situation with this gallery exhibition, there we didn't change, or like when I had my own works, we didn't change the recordings at all. They maybe were just a bit gained up, depending on the situation, but in other meanings there was nothing. There was no manipulation with them, because it all depends on the attitude behind it, on the concept.
Thank you so much. A question from Olifa H, who is from Asia, working with spatial audio for 2 years. Does anyone know any great event, festival, conference, forum about spatial audio for creativity in Europe? It's a general question for important things.
Maybe I can. Hi, everyone.
Hello, Sarah.
Hi. Maybe I can mention music and research. I don't know. Research in Belgium. They make spatialization events. So it's a little bit old school electroacoustic music spatialization. It's not really exactly what Polina has been addressing today, but it is kind of interesting to deal. It's an interesting approach to deal with multi-channel work. I can send the link in the chat.
Yes, please.
Yes, will do.
Okay, next question. Actually, all of us can read the chat, but I'm the loudspeaker now. So Anna asks everyone, do you have, but maybe Polina, I think, do you have specific considerations when using live recorded voice and when implementing the works in natural outdoor spaces?
I am not sure actually what the question is about.
Is it about? I think it's about human voice. Is it? Does it belong to your repertoire to use live recorded voice? And if yes, if you use, what are your methods to do? How do you implement in your spaces?
I personally am now in the phase of searching for my personal approach to it. I think I never worked with like live recorded voice. I didn't work with my voice, and I didn't work with voices of people around me. The only work with speech was this work based on Josef Čapek's work, but it was material, it was sampling for me. It was material that I found, it was already made by someone in 70s and cut into vinyl, which I found, and then together with Jan, we digitalized it and recorded it for ourselves, and then I made samples from it and made this work. but I never worked with voice or like live implementing of the voice. So for now, I don't have any considerations regarding this.
Thank you so much. And I guess we have time for one or two more questions. So let's go for them.
There was this also implementing the works in natural outdoor spaces.
Oh yes, sorry.
And it's necessary to explore the space from my perspective. And I actually have this I think it's a tricky thing to work with sound in public spaces, like to make installations or works that are not for one day, but which will be there for a longer time, because there is lots of sounds outside already, and the ones that are helping us to connect with the environment, but most of them is not much helping to do it, and it's a very tricky thing to work with sounds outside. And I personally did only this work, which was played for 3 days, and that was enough for the people who live in front of this building, can say, because even though it was like drony sounds, even this was disturbing for these people who live there, who like wake up and go to sleep with these sounds. So there are different aspects of making the natural or outdoor spaces installations, and it's more about equipment, I guess. And there is lots of ways how to make sure that your installation runs till the end of the exhibition, and using impregnated speakers, using not so power taking devices for the work, and just thinking about isolation the most, I would say. And making the works in natural spaces is not something that I'm personally doing so far, because from my perspective, I didn't find a way for myself to go into nature and make there some artwork and leave it there for some reasons. I just think that for me so far it is more essential to learn from the nature and get inspired by this, but leave it as it is. But there is lots of beautiful examples of using natural environment for the installations, and actually who are using solar energy, and who are not so invasive. But I'm at the moment not having any ideas of how to work with this, from my perspective. I think that was all regarding questions.
Thank you very much. If it was really the last question, was it? It seems, but it was really very collaborative, the whole thing. Thank you, Polina, for this very beautiful and thoughtful survey on spatial sound and your own approach and own works. And thank you for everybody to be here with us. And now I make some promotion for the next seminar, which is in April on the 22nd again, but that one won't be a Monday anymore. That will be a Thursday, 22nd April, which is actually Earth Day. And this talk will be given by Magdalena Zdrodowska, and the title is Ear Trumpets Afterlives in the Era of Electricity and Electronics. So you are all welcome for the next seminar, and let me remind you that we have planned 4 seminars in this season. So in May we will have the last one in the series, which will be given by Jacek Smolitsky. I think we had a really nice evening. I would like to ask those who are interested in next Monday's CENSE gathering about the official organizing of our organization. I asked everybody who would like to be part of this smaller gathering, stay with us, and all our guests who were so kind to listen to Polina Khatsenka. We wish a nice night and nice, healthy and energetic days in the coming period. Thank you very much for being here. Swabek, would you like to say